Let's see, we have Rachel, request to Hood River Valley Parks and Recreation District for SDC funded projects.
Great, Mayor McBride, councilors. The next item is also related to Parks SDCs, so I'll leave it to you to decide how to address both of these. But the purpose of the item that city staff is presenting is that the city has an opportunity to formally request that system development charges collected within the urban growth boundary be prioritized for land acquisition for future parks and trails. This is consistent with the recently adopted multi-jurisdictional Parks and Recreation Plan. As you all know, system development charges are fees paid by developers to pay for necessary infrastructure expansions, including parks. The city does not calculate or charge or own system development charge. The Parks and Rec District does that. We collect the fee and immediately transmit it over to the Parks and Rec District. So again, the Parks and Rec District has requested input from their various partners in the community with regards to the use of Parks SDC fees. So this is an opportunity for the City Council to formally request inclusion of two projects. Staff's recommending two projects: the acquisition of 2 to 5 acres of land for parks within the urban growth boundary, and the acquisition of trail easements and property within the same area. With that, I'll turn it over to the City Council for discussion.
Thank you, Rachel. So just to, thought we had something on here. So the total amounts that Parks and Rec has collected within the urban growth boundary is about $781,000.
Mayor, there are two figures out there, and this is where I think it's important to look at the next item as well. So those are the numbers over the past 5 years that Hood River Parks and Rec provided to us. It's my understanding, based on their letter, that there is approximately $1 million in the fund that was collected from fees within the urban growth boundary.
Okay. And the last time city funds were used specifically by Parks and Rec was for the Eagle Park, correct? And that was in the county. They came to the city and asked if they could use some of the city's funds for that.
Yeah, the IGA between the city and the county requires that the Parks and Rec District request approval from the City Council to spend funds generated inside the UGB outside of the UGB. And it's my understanding that Golden Eagle Park was the last request.
Okay, thanks. Just for a little bit of history, so everyone kind of knew what we have. What the last thing we did was that. And so I don't remember, and maybe you know, Mark, because you were involved in Parks and Rec prior to being on City Council too, but when was the last time Parks and Rec money that has been collected from SDC has been used within the city?
There's multiple facilities. I mean, they bought easements on West Side Trail. They've Culbertson Park in Seavercraft area. There's a park sort of near St. Charles Place. I can't remember the name of it, that they bought with SDC money. So okay. They've done stuff. Yeah.
They've done stuff. Okay, great.
Expanded Children's Park. They contributed to the expanded Children's Park as well.
Yep.
Okay. All right, great. Just kind of trying to get big picture here for what funds have been used for. So this discussion on requesting these funds so we can get some more parks within the city.
Sorry, just to clarify, we're talking about our request to them versus their request to us right now?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I can go.
Okay, Megan.
I'm already unmuted. I mean, so I think the two projects staff came up with are basically what we've been talking about with the master plan and all of our conversations around parks and parks acquisition. So on my end, they make sense. I would maybe clarify, just to be explicit, that the parkland within the urban growth boundary is ideally, but you know, in the general areas we've been talking about in the master plan as the priority locations. But otherwise, I'm supportive of the request. They definitely make sense with our wants and needs.
Mark?
Thanks. I do want to recognize that Mark and Marcy from Parks District are listening in too. So thanks for you guys. Question for Rachel is that this anticipates city staff working with park staff, or it's city staff, or how does the machine run?
Yeah, thanks very much. Well, the answer is it depends. You know, we have a really strong working relationship with the Parks and Rec District and collaborate frequently on these types of projects. So really this just identifies that there's a source of funds out there, and we'll continue to work together to identify those potential locations.
No, perfect. My personal opinion is this is exactly why we did the master plan, and through that process, everybody and all the different entities agreed that acquisition was like the thing to focus on, because if it's gone, it's gone. So us getting access to these lands, and then we'll figure out how to develop them later is the goal. So I would hope that this is what would be called a good start, and then we can work with them on the rest of the SDC funds, finding acquisition opportunities as well. But I'm fully supportive of this. I think it's what we should be doing. So good on us.
Others? Tim?
Yeah, I agree with Megan and Mark. I do have a question. I think it gets to Mark's point. They had mentioned that the SDCs couldn't be used for park maintenance, but can they be used for park development?
Yes, thank you for the question, Counselor. SDCs are regulated in Oregon state statute, and so there's very specific things that they can be used for. They have to be capacity expanding. So if you acquire a piece of property and it's serving an area of growth, you can use system development charges to develop that park.
Thanks.
Others with additional questions or comments? Eric?
I'll just say briefly, because I think Mark said it better than I could. I remember sitting actually in Mark's office with Megan going through the chart. Are we going to partner here? Are we going to collaborate here? Are we going to lead here? But this does seem to be exactly what we were trying to do, which was trying to make real the pretty green blobs in some of the vision documents. So I appreciate Mark Hickok's leadership on this and that of his colleagues. And I think this is a step in the right direction.
Great. Thank you, Eric. All right. Additional comments? Jessica, did you have something?
I was just going to make the motion. I will move to direct staff to submit an SCC request form for 2 projects to the Hood River Valley Parks and Rec District, and to continue to collaborate with Parks District staff to implement the projects, acquisition of 2 to 5 acres of land and parks within the urban growth boundary of $500,000, and acquisition of trail easements and property consistent with the Parks and Rec master plan at $150,000.
Kate, you're
Well, she's
Sorry, you guys. Trying to keep the background noise down. Oh, and I'm reading my paper, and you guys are all waving your hands like, we can't hear you. Sorry about that. I move to direct, we have a motion by Jessica to direct staff to submit an SDC request form for 2 projects to the Hood River Valley Parks and Rec District to continue to collaborate with Parks District staff to implement the projects. of a 2 to 5 acre piece of land for parks within the urban growth boundary for 500,000 and acquisition funds of 150,000 for trail easements and property consistent with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, but a little bit different from how you just restated it, Kate. It's 3 to 5 acres of parks. So that doesn't mean a 3 to 5 acre park. It means
It's 2 to 5 on the sheet, Mark.
2 to 5 acres of land.
25
For parks.
acres of land.
So we aren't saying it's one, it doesn't necessarily have to be 1 2-acre piece or 1 5-acre piece. It could be a 1.5 acre piece and a 3-acre piece. Okay, just so that's clear for the public. Do I have a second?
And I did second.
Oh, you seconded it, Mark. Okay. Discussion? Megan, did you have something?
Well, I guess it depends on if the rest of council cares to add it, but would anyone else like to add the, defining thing of the parks land should be within the priority areas identified in the master plan? Or are we fine with what is written as is?
Because it's collaborative in nature with our staff and theirs, I was fine, but it doesn't hurt either. So,
I mean, I think we're going to be following the Parks Master Plan. So, I mean, that defines where general facilities are already. I'm okay with leaving it like it is. Tim?
It probably would be fine to leave it how it is, but I can see the benefit of a clarification.
Can you say that again, Tim, that last part?
I can see the benefit of clarifying it just for clarity purposes.
Jessica, do you want to put a clarification clause on that motion?
Yeah, I was trying to think of what it would be. It would be that the acquisition of the 2 to 5 acres is to be on following the West Side area plan. Is that?
I think like the trail one, you could say consistent with the Parks and Rec master plan.
Okay.
To keep it pretty.
I will clarify my motion that the acquisition of the 2 to 5 acres will also be consistent with the Parks and Rec master plan.
Okay, we've had a clarification of the motion. Do you want to second that clarification, Mark?
Yep, I'll do that second.
Okay, we have a clarification now of the first and the second, again by Jessica and Mark. Additional discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Megan?
Yes.
Tim?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Mark?
Yes.
Jessica?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Great.
Kate, you muted again.
Okay, now we have presentation from Mark Hickok. If you want to put him on, I don't see him yet, but regarding SDC charge requests.
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Hey, Mark.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Well, thank you, Council, for having me this evening to talk about this. I think that we explained it pretty well that when there is something that is outside the urban growth boundary, because of our collection agreements, the Parks District does need to approach the council to ask for permission to spend those funds outside the urban growth boundary. You were right. The last time we did this was for Golden Eagle Park because it was fairly close to the urban growth boundary. We knew that city residents would be using that area. In this case, both of these projects are literally on the border of the urban growth boundary. In fact, the trail is no more than 30 or 40 feet inside of the urban growth boundary and starts and ends in the city. And so it will really serve the city residents. And the other one as well shares a border on 2 fence lines with the urban growth boundary. So these are projects that will for sure serve the city residents, which was the purpose of this in the first place. And I'm here to entertain any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We have our packet has the request in it, which was on page 82, and then there was a map of the properties on page 83. Anyone, Megan?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for being here. I think I have one larger question and then maybe a couple about the actual projects, but and this is maybe stupid. Is there a separate pot of money for within the city versus within the urban growth boundary versus within the county, or how do you track it?
There are 2 separate funds. One is for money collected outside the urban growth boundary, and one is for money collected inside the urban growth boundary.
Okay, awesome. And then I guess, so we've got the information we have on these 2 projects is up to 400,000 for both of them. Can you kind of divide out what are the costs for each project individually?
Sure, it's about 300,000 for the west side property one and about 100,000 for the trail.
Okay. And then I guess within both of those projects, what's the allocation of like county SDCs are being used for some portion, maybe city SDCs for some portion, grants or other funding for some portion, or are you picturing that all of it is being covered by the city SDCs?
At this point, all of it for the city SDCs, especially for the trail, because that one, although it's in the county, it's really for city residents. The other one will probably be a mix, but at this point, it is the very beginning of it where we're just planning. This is not actually purchasing the property and not developing the property. This is going through our due diligence to do the planning of it. And so we don't have any grants right now. We have been told by the state that this is a great candidate for an acquisition grant, and we would like to go for an acquisition grant if we get the permits to build a park in the scenic area. But at this point, we are just planning on using the money collected inside the UGB, since that's the primary group that will be using this area.
Okay, so for the feasibility aspect of the what hopefully is a larger project, you would think it's 100% city SDCs? For the feasibility part of it, yes. If we go toward the development of it, that could change, and there will definitely be grant money involved in or purchase and development. There would be grant money involved, and we could use some of the county money. The county money is a much lower fund. There's not nearly as much development in the county than there is in the city, and we are wanting to use that for some projects that are a little bit further out in the county, not ones that are right on the border, that will mostly serve city residents. Okay. Would you mind sharing how much is in the county pot of money?
I don't know the exact amount, but it's around $200,000.
Okay, thank you.
Mark? Zan Miller?
That's right. It's not room for 2 marks here, Mark. I want to split my comments between the 2 projects. The trail project along the edge of Seavercroft is something that it actually sort of drove the master plan process. The fact that we weren't able to get a land set aside within that development, and that SDCs was supposed to be doing it but wasn't, and stuff. So I'm super, my heart is warm that we're talking about doing the trail over towards Elliott, and so I'm highly supportive of that. Good job. For Blackman Skakel, within the master plan, it is a viable park space for one of the 4 quadrants within the west side plan, the quadrant that's right around that. So it really reflects about, a 25% allocation towards those park things. The $300,000 just for the planning sort of scares me a little bit in that we don't know if scenic area, you know, we don't know if it's going to be approved. You know, is this, it sounds like sunk cost on a bet that this big thing will happen. On the personal level, I like Blackman Skakel a lot. On the city, where does it fit within the master plan for the city? It's, you know, it's like I said, it's a quarter of the West Side Plan properties. So I guess I'd like to suggest that we sort of talk about, what's the cost sharing and risk reduction for that initial step on Blackman Skakel? Does that make sense?
Was there a question in there for me, Mark?
I don't know. Maybe you can just talk to how do we get, what's the least number of dollars to spend to get through the, yes, it can be it can be an open space park.
So you're looking at pretty close to it. So not all that money is going into studying. Some of that money is going into securing it. So we had to purchase an option from both of them. The option's about $72,000 per year. And we had to purchase that for 2 years in order to make this work, because the planning process to get through a scenic area permit is about a year. And in order to go through the process to do all your due diligence and plan the park is about another year or so. So we just hired Walker Macy, some consultants to go through that, and we are going to be going through there. The reason that we're going through all this trouble is because this property is in the scenic area. And when we went to the county and asked them, can we build a park with ball fields, you know, a bathroom facility, parking, all of these different things, they came back and said, we can't answer that. The only way to really answer that is to run it through the scenic area permitting process, because they have never seen a park of this scale and this size built in the scenic area before. And we even checked with the other counties to see what other parks had been built in the scenic area, and parks of this nature just haven't been built in the scenic area before. So it really came down to the county saying we have to go through the entire permitting process. And, you know, with that, there's lots of, you know, studies with traffic impact analysis and wetland delineation and a lot of these different things. And so rather than get stuck with a piece of property, purchasing a piece of property outright, then finding out after a couple of years of due diligence that we can't do what we promised the voters we could do with it, and get into a situation like that, which we have been in before, we decided that we should really do our homework well and get an approved permit here. So that's where we're at. We really we tried to keep it as low as possible, but it's going to be about $300,000 to figure this out. And this is not, you know, we're confident that we can get there with this, and if we do, then you know, hopefully a lot of this information and these studies and everything can go straight into the development of the property. Does that answer your question, Sam?
Jessica, did you have a question?
I was just going to say, especially knowing now that some of the payments to hold that property are included in that amount, you know, just I can say how complicated the scenic area planning can be, and so I think that putting some money and time towards it is essential to make sure that it's a viable project.
I'm going to go, and then Tim. I kind of feel trepidatious about the Blackman Skakel property. I'm totally on board with the Elliott Park property and the trail there, with, you know, getting that finished and working with Columbia Land Trust. And I think that's a good use of some of those funds, and it will be, you know, additional trail that, you know, as SDCs, it's going specifically to finish a trail, get more access, you know, buy easements, whatever it is. I'm not even sure 100% if the SDCs for the city would qualify for option money and planning. It's not acquisition, it's not building a new park. I'm a bit trepidatious about that. And I've worked in the scenic area for years and years and years because that was my job. And I know how difficult it is to get this kind of thing on a piece of property like that. I remember when Beacon Rock was expanded, the park there, and they said, no, you can't put a parking lot there. You have to move it over here so it can't be seen from the trail going up the rock. So, and this is wide open property, how are you going to hide it? And sometimes they'll say, well, you can't hide it, so you can't do it. So I'm very trepidatious about spending this kind of money on a possibility at this point. So that's my take on that. Tim?
Thanks, Mayor. Those are, I agree with all of what's been said previously. I'm wondering, and maybe I'm sure that this is way ahead of where you're at, but have any of the adjacent landowners been contacted about the potential for, about this park, the potential for this park?
Over the past years, they have not recently, but we did do a small study of the property in 2016, where a lot of them were brought in as stakeholders. There was a graduate class at PSU that helped us with it, and we didn't go as deep as we needed to in order to go through the permitting process and such, but we reached out to a lot of them at that point. And we definitely will be again going through this process, reaching out to adjacent landowners on it.
And how did they feel about the park?
It's mixed, I think that there were some questions about, would you feel okay with lights, like a lit park, a lit ball fields, and that was one that they were not as comfortable with. But as far as parkland, there was mixed results. And I don't think that we are going for a lit park at this place. That the West Side Elementary is right across the way, and if that area they ever want to put lights there, it'd be much easier to put lights on their fields there than it would on these ones.
And there appears to be an orchard next to there. Did you talk to that owner?
Not recently, but yeah, the orchard is in the urban growth boundary. I don't know in the 2016 plan what they talked about with him at that point.
Thank you.
Others? Questions or comments? Megan?
I'm going to go more opinion on this one. And this is really hard because obviously, like, the trail would get used. I mean, heck, I would definitely use it. And I think if you could actually get the West Side Park, obviously that's a huge benefit for the community. I am struggling with the ask that all of this is covered by city SDCs and not some sort of shared cost system. I think, things like the trail is the stuff that's built outside of the urban growth boundary is on Columbia Land Trust land, and so it's like the land is secure basically. So I don't feel like we need to do it now or we lose an easement. To Kate's point, there is putting a lot of money towards a possibility. Well, I can both see the value of, obviously we need to answer these questions if we want to have that possibility actually come to fruition. I don't love that all of that uncertainty is being put on city residents, SDCs, and that all of this, we'd be spending about half of the pot of money on things that are outside of the urban growth boundary, and they would be used by city residents. But I would like to see, given our conversation, that literally the last thing we just talked about being priority of acquisition of things. It feels hard to say, hey, we're going to prioritize this, but we're also going to put the money towards other things that aren't what we just said is the priority. I don't know what my answer is to that, but it feels a little hard to say, yeah, I want to totally hand over $400,000 for both of these.
I agree with you, Megan. It seems, it's a large burden for the city to have for a pretty big risk, in my opinion, on whether it's going to come to fruition. If it was a smaller ask with a lot more shared partners for that, it'd be a little bit easier to swallow anyway. And, if it was a sure deal and it was already done and you're saying, and we need this to, put in the park, then I'd go, absolutely, every cent, yes, go. But it's just so much risk for us to be putting in right now without it being a little bit more shared, it feels like. Other comments? Right. Thank you.
Mayor McBride.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify one point. You had questions whether or not this could be used for planning and for securing easements and such, rather than the actual purchase and development, and it can be. We have checked on all of that, and so that is an allowable use of these funds. So just to clarify that.
Mark Sandmiller.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Mark if, given this discussion, is there are there clever ideas to cost share the scenic area permission part of the cost, or,
Yeah. Some of it can go toward the county SDC funds. Like I say, I think the majority of the people that would be using this park, the vast majority with the neighborhoods that are going to be butting up against the two corners of this, will be city residents. So if there's if it helps sell it, or helps you feel better about it, we can dip into the county SDC dollars. We don't need to ask for any permission in order to use the outside UGB SDC dollars. So it can be a split with that. If you think that maybe 20% of the people that are using this park will be county residents and 80% will be city, we could make a split around 80-20 or something like that, or wherever you feel like that will be. And then of course with the development of it, we really do plan to leverage a lot of other funds in order to be to move forward with that. But unfortunately there really aren't grants to secure options on pieces of property. And if you remember right, one of these pieces of property was for sale. Jeff Blackman had his up on the market, and we really wanted to get an option on this property in order for him to take it off the market, which is what happened when we signed the option with him. He called his real estate agent and pulled it off the market. So if we don't act on property like this when it is available and empty, we could lose it. And that's what we were trying to do, is move quickly, because we have heard this project also does has been pushed very hard by a lot of people in many of our surveys and just coming to our meetings. And so this has some pretty great community support.
Mark Hickok, I have a couple more questions. And
Sure.
if you don't want to answer these because they're money questions, just tell me can't answer. Okay. Does the option money go towards the purchase price, or is it separate?
It's separate. We tried to get it to go for the purchase price, but they wouldn't agree to that.
Okay. Have you had an appraisal and come to an agreed upon price?
We have come to an agreed upon price. The price is about $85,000 per acre. It is a little complicated because there's two parcels there, and they both would like to keep 1 acre for rental home for 10 years. If the property comes into the urban growth boundary, they would like us to split that out, and they would keep that acre. But if it does not, then we will purchase that final acre, or purchase the easement back from them for $85,000 plus interest. So we will actually only be paying for 18 of the 20 acres at first.
Okay. Okay. And I guess my question, one question, did you get an appraisal?
We did get an appraisal. I don't have that exact dollar amount in front of me. It was lower than within the price that we've finally agreed to. It was a long, probably close to a year negotiation with them, and that's about where we could get. But I don't have that number.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. Additional, Jessica?
I was just gonna say that I know that I really do think that the large majority of the folks that are gonna use this park are gonna be gonna be living within the UGB. And I understand that this is what I think we've heard also from the community that they really want this park to happen. I think it even showed up in like some of the 2021 work plan comments. And if this is what it's going to take to make that park happen, then, you know, sure, it's not great, but I think we need to try to make that park happen. I guess so I'm okay if the city is fully covering it, if our SDCs are fully covering it, but also if, you know, if others want to recommend some kind of split, then I'm okay with that. And I'm fine with the trail. I think that's great.
I guess my hesitation is, you know, if I knew that this money absolutely 100% was going to give an okay by the Gorge Commission to do what we want to do, I would probably go, well, you know, it's going to be a slam dunk. We're going to have to pay for it. We're going to get a park. But I don't believe that. You know, I just don't know if it's going to be approved. So, I mean, I just think it's a risk. It's a pretty large risk. Just because of my dealing with these particular kinds of things, recreation intensity zones, screening, key viewing area, you know, all the stuff I dealt with, I'm a bit trepidatious about it. So, you know, that's why I'm hesitant on spending the city's money in any big way without other entities being involved in the risk. Eric, and then Mark, Jan Miller.
Yeah, I mean, the mayor is obviously speaking a truth there when she talks about the risk. And I'm struggling though, because Councilor Mehta also, what her comments are resonating with me, and having maybe a risk on the other side of failing to act means that one day these are just houses and there's no park. So that is another risk. But I guess maybe I'm still in the question zone, because I'm not sure exactly what the question is before council. Because I'm reading Mark Hickok's letter of February 18th. It sounds to me that they're not asking us to, you know, write them a check to buy the property, but they're in fact wanting to do a feasibility study to maybe get at some of these concerns that the mayor is raising, which are legitimate and perfectly, you know, good questions to be asking. And so, you know, so I guess I'm sensing the question isn't let's go buy this today. It's more, hey, let's look into this because maybe we should buy it. And if that's the question, which I think is the question, I'd be a lot more comfortable with that. So I guess maybe I'm asking what is exactly the question before council? Because I'm aware there is a risk here, but there's also a risk of not having a park. And I would hate, regardless of the outcome of tonight's discussion, I wouldn't want it to chill the progress to making these parks over on the west side a reality.
Thank you for the question. To answer that, yes, we are looking to study this property, not specifically right now to purchase. We won't make this decision to purchase this property until after we get the results of the scenic area permit and get that approved. Also, just a clarification, we're not asking the city to write a check. We have the money in the SDC account. It is money that the Parks District collects, and we're asking for the city to give us permission to spend some of our money that we collected or that the city collected outside the urban growth boundary. So it's not that we're going to the city asking for city money. It's money that's already in with the Parks District.
Right, and I did misspeak there a little bit, speaking loosely, because I think there's an intergovernmental agreement that says you can't do that. So that's probably why you're here asking for permission. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So Mark Hickok, you
Yes.
said the money would go for Walker Macy fees. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it would also go to pay the option? for,
Yes,
okay. And what else? Is that it?
that's it.
Okay. And that's about
And-
300,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
about that. So I shouldn't say that's about it. In case there are any other things that come up with the study outside of Walker Macy's scope, you know, they need some sort of a different soil analysis or, you know, other studies or something like that. There's a little bit built in for that.
And that's the, for permitting fees that you would have to pay to the Gorge Commission and, you know, mapping and like you said, environmental, everything involved in the permitting process through the scenic areas, correct?
Yes.
Mark Sandmiller?
Yeah, I was just asking myself, how much would I sort of bet on the process? And the number I keep coming back to is about, you know, a year's burn rate of, or a year's rate of SDC stuff. So if I guess if we're looking for a number, I would like to talk about, you know, maybe allocating 150 towards the Blackman Skakel, with the understanding that once the permissions are given and stuff, that a bigger city SDC investment in the next phase is probably applicable to this thing. You know, maybe that's a grant match or something like that. So I'd be comfortable right now with the, you know, 150 towards that one. But it's a gamble, but like Eric said, is, you know, you'd hate to watch it go away. So 0 isn't the right answer, but 300 seems like a pretty heavy lift. So that's about where my head is.
I think that's the 1-year burn rate feels like a comfortable gamble to me as well. And thank you for bringing that up, Mark. I feel like I'd be comfortable with that.
I also feel comfortable with that, Mark, because it's, you know, it's just then it's a shared risk. And, you know, it's taking a gamble on a year's worth of SDCs, not, you know, 2.5 years worth of SDCs. But I'm feeling much more comfortable with that number. Others?
I already said I was fine with it as presented. So
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, and that makes sense to me. I guess what I would like to hear is how Mark feels about that. Mark Hickok.
Well, I mean, maybe if we could say that I could come back at a later date and ask for more if we need to. In fact, if we would go to purchase this property, we will probably need to do that, to go back and ask. I feel like, you know, some of this money is for, you know, a development that, you know, I'm sorry, some of the outside the UGB money is collected from, you know, people that are building a house in Parkdale or Odell. And at $150,000, that's about a split of 50-50. And so the thought of you know, a person building a house in Parkdale feeling like they're getting their money's worth out of SDC that they're charged for a park that's being built right next to Westside Elementary is not quite as fair as somebody that, you know, purchased a home here in the city limits. So that's why we were really trying to use the city SDC funds for this, because it really is somebody as a proximity thing. The people are a lot closer to it that are spending the SDCs on this in this area. But I understand your points, and I understand there's definitely a risk here. But our Parks District has been in situations where we purchased property before and not been able to develop it to the same level that we wanted to, and we're trying to avoid that at this point.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, this is going to be like a regional park. I mean, I know it's going to be next to the city limits, but I think it's going to be something like the swimming pool or waterfront park or children's park or Jackson Park. There's people that come from all over the county to use those larger parks for, get-togethers with their families or whatever. I mean, it won't be right next door, true, but I think it's, it's going to be if it can be secured and bought and developed, it's going to be a big park. And so I think it's going to have quite a draw. It's pretty easy for people to get to from the mid part of the valley too. So I don't know. And, and like Golden Eagle by the high school, and the pump track, I mean, it's a unique thing. And I think this could be a really unique thing too, that would draw quite a few people personally. If we don't have any more questions for Mark Hickok, do we have a motion of some sort? Or direction for staff? I don't think we have a motion. Here. Wait a minute. Page 81.
So I will make a motion and just quick first, Mark, I think that us saying not the whole 300 now doesn't say that the correct ratio won't be true after, we spend the $2 million for the whole thing. So it's just, how do we risk reduce at this kickoff thing? That said, I'll make a motion that we approve a modified request for the Hood River Valley Parks and Rec District to spend up to it would be $250,000 of SDC funds for the two proposed projects. That's $150K for Blackman Skakel and $100K for the East Side Trail.
Okay, Mark's made a motion. Mark Salmaner's made a motion to allow $250,000 of the city's SDCs to go to the Hood River Valley Parks and Recreation District for two proposed projects, $100,000 for Elliott Park, the East Side Trail project, and $150,000 towards the Blackman Skakel due diligence and feasibility. Do I have a second?
I'll second. And I just have a question of, do we need to define between the two projects, or like if Parks and Rec can do a cost savings in the trail, are we comfortable with whatever that savings is going to Blackman Skakel? I mean, and maybe that's a Mark question of, or does that matter to council?
I was just trying to identify the two projects in my motion and not so much a hard line between them. So I would modify it if it is needed to.
I would probably prefer not to have a hard line between them in case I am able to make some cost savings in one and be able to move over to the other.
So Kate, if I modified the motion to 250K for those two projects, is that sufficiently detailed?
Yeah, that's fine.
So
I will second that modification.
Okay, so Mark has modified the motion, just 250,000 for the two projects. And Megan, have you seconded that? Is that what you're, okay, as modified. Additional discussion? Roll call vote. Tim?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Megan?
Yes.
Mark?
yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Kate? Kate votes yes. All right. Thank you, Mark Hickok. Lively discussion. I'm sorry it wasn't the full 400 for you, but it's a start.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. All right, organizational updates. Department heads. Let's see, who do we have on this evening? I'll just ask, does anyone have any updates from any of